Yeah, so I think what we actually have to do is change the conversation. I think we need to stop talking about mental health and start talking about mental wellness. And education is, the starting point, the entry point into all of that. And we need to be giving young people the skills to help them cope with the challenges that they face every day. Anxiety is a perfectly normal part of life, but at the moment, because they don't have those skills, they don't know how to deal with it, and that's when the problems start to escalate.
One of the reasons it's so important to try and start early and start with younger children is not only because we see that the age that it starts to manifest is as young as 8, but half of all adult mental health problems have manifested by the age of 14, and 75% of them have manifested by the age of 21. So this is something that really has to be tackled early. And at the moment, the cost to the UK government is £105 billion a year. So, it's an economic issue as well as a quality of life issue. And the conversation is growing in terms of, chatter about mental health being a problem. But as Kerstyn said, unless we turn it into a positive conversation about positive psychology and coping mechanisms and how it's actually easy to tackle these problems if we can get people talking about it and get people more relaxed about the ideas that, you have ups and you have downs and you can get help and support, things are going to carry on getting worse, we feel. And it's a changing world, and we need to give kids the capacity to cope with, how to survive in an ever-changing world, in a system which seems very old-fashioned and not willing to listen.
Yeah, the other thing we see with the work that we do is that the youth voice is really missing. In the media or wherever, it's so often adults talking about children's mental health problems, and so a lot of the work that we do with Me Too is to try and give the space to give young people a voice to tell us what they're worried about and what their problems are, and also how they think they can be solved, and we think that that's going to be the most powerful ways actually to make the young people the advocates for change.
And one of the reasons why Me Too works well is because we do have a lot of users who are already in the mental health system. So they're with CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. And we have kids who are just beginning to rehearse what it feels like to come out and admit that they have a problem. And we have other kids who are much further down the line, and those young people are using their experiences to help people at the beginning of their journey. And it is that sort of peer interaction. Actually, often the people that young people will listen to is other young people. They will screen out adults, professionals, teachers. But when it comes from somebody who is speaking in their own voice of their own experiences as a young person, it makes it more acceptable and more accessible, and that's really important.
So I think what we often sort of overlook in schools is the fact that we teach them all these academic subjects like maths or science or English or whatever. But what we also need to teach young people is emotional literacy. And we see that very much with the different schools that we work in, that the schools that have more developed programs, the young people find it much easier, and boys particularly find it much easier then to talk about their problems, to share the problems and then get solutions and help. And where it's ignored, the young people find it, they're incredibly embarrassed or they find very uncomfortable. And, that's about breaking down those barriers. That schools are completely positioned to do that.
And one of the problems is that, boys find it harder to seek help, but girls tend to monopolise available help. So we're incredibly lucky. Well, it's not by accident, it's by design, because we've created anonymity is central to our offer. We have a much higher percentage of boys using our app than would ordinarily be using any social media platform that was about, mental health or alleviating anxiety. And that's quite difficult to do within a school setting where any kind of counselling is face-to-face, and boys are much more resistant to the idea of coming forward. So, for example, girls are much more likely to talk about suicidal ideation or quite dramatic experiences. Boys don't talk about it, but suicide is the biggest cause of death for men under 35. They take action, and it's absolutely critical that we try and get to them early and teach them when they're very young that it's okay to ask for help.